Welcome to the Israelite Language Lab. My name's Dr. Trevor U. Dennis, and we are here to deal with Paleo Hebrew. What we are doing is seeking to get people to understand that this is not a made-up language, but it is, in fact, the language of the Shamayim, or the heavens, that it was what was spoken in heaven before people ever knew what language was. And then it was the language spoken by the whole world as we know it even today. And then at Babel, the languages were scattered. And in that they were scattered, people then spoke different languages, but one group kept that language going. The line of the righteous, which flowed from Adam through to Canaan and through to Noah and through to Shem and to Abraham, on to Isaac and Jacob, and then to Joseph and the children of Israel. Moses wrote in this language called today Paleo Hebrew. Not just Moses that wrote in it, but also the prophets wrote in it. Then when they went to Babylon, they took that language and the alphabet that was spoken then and began to write in our language, to write in the Babylonian block script, which is called Aramaic. That is the case, but the language that you hear people speaking today in Israel is not that language. For that language is a made-up language, a composite language, which is composed of Ladino, a Spanish language, Yiddish, a Eastern European language, and Biblical Hebrew fused together by a guy by the name of Ben Yehuda, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, who did it in the late 18th century, early 1900. So this is the origin of their language, but ours is not the same. Let me show you a little clip concerning the Israeli language. Here we go. So this man invented Israeli because Hebrew was already there. By the way, like, subscribe, share, click the bell. We want the thumbs up. So do give us the thumbs up. And the more thumbs up you give us, the more the videos spread. So thank you very much for doing that. Those of you who are watching, we appreciate you. May Yahweh barak you in the truth. So this is the contribution of Eliezer ben Yehuda. He did not discover Hebrew. He did not teach people to speak Hebrew. He taught them to speak a modernized dialect of the Hebrew language, which is called Israeli. So it is not Hebrew, it is Israeli. So let's continue the tongue of our forefathers all the way through to where we are now. Let's deal with that. So, Jubilees 4, verse 16 to 17. And in the 11th Jubilee, Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Baraka, the daughter of Rashujal, a daughter of his father's brother in the 4th week of his Jubilee. And she bare him a son in the 5th week, in the 4th year of the Jubilee, and he called his name Enoch. And he was the first among men that was born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of their months in a book. So who spoke first? Adam. Adam was given the gift of speech, and Enoch was the first to write down what was said, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. Jubilees 6, verse 11 to 12 and verse 29. On this account he spoke to you, that you should make a covenant with the children of Israel, in this month upon the mountain with an oath, and that you should sprinkle blood upon them because of all the words of the covenant. So the words that were written down, which Yahweh made with them who? The children of Israel forever. He did not make a covenant with the entire world, but only with the children of Israel. Verse 12 of the same. And this testimony is written concerning you, that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth. And the man who eats of the blood of beasts or of cattle or of birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land, or will die. He and his seed are going to die out. Why? Because they ignored the written covenant that we ought not to eat blood. This is in Noah's time. Round about Genesis 10, you'll find that we were told not to drink blood from that time forward. Verse 29 of the same. And they placed them on the heavenly tablets. I keep making the point that all these things were written down in heaven before they were handed down to Moshe or Masha later on. Each had 13 weeks. Each feast had 13 weeks between them. From one to another past their memorial. From the first to the second, and from the second to the third, and from the third to the fourth. Jubilees 10, verse 13. And Noah wrote down all things in a book, as we instructed him, that's the Malachim, concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were precluded from hurting, the sons of Noah. Jubilees 11, verse 16. Notice that before, in the one concerning Noah, that they wrote down all the medication that man would require in order to keep himself healthy. And that would have been in the same language, the language of the Shamayim, the one that Adam had passed down, the writings that Enoch had passed down. Jubilees 11:16. And the child began to understand the errors of the earth, speaking of Abram, that all went astray after graven images and after uncleanness. And his father, that's his father, Abraham's father, taught him writing. And he was 2 weeks of years old, that's 14. And he separated himself from his father, and that he might not worship idols with him. So Abraham's father, Terah, was an idol worshiper, but he taught his son to read and write, and as a result, his sons understood something that made him separate himself from his father, who was an idol worshiper. I believe that would have been the writings of their forefathers. Joshua 9, verse 5 to 6. And when Abram came out of the cave, he went to Noah, the cave that he was hiding with because Nimrod was trying to kill him, where he probably spent a lot of his time reading whatever he could. He went to Noah and his son Shem, and he remained with them to learn the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And no man knew where Abram was. And Abram served Noah and Shem his son for a long time. So Abram was now with his forefathers who were still living and learning from them. Remember the man called Melchizedek? Well, in the Apocrypha, we find out that Melchizedek is actually Shem, or his correct name, Sham. And it goes on, verse 6, and Abraham was in Noah's house 39 years. So from 14 to 39. And Abram knew Yahweh from 3 years old. That's probably when he started learning to read and write. And he went in the ways of Yahweh until the day of his death, as Noah and Shem had taught him. So what did they teach him? The ways of Noah. How did he know? He read and wrote in the same language that they did. And Noah read and wrote in the language that was before the flood. Before the flood. And before the flood was the language of the Shamayim, the language of heaven. And all the sons of the earth in those days greatly transgressed against Yahweh, and they rebelled against him, and they served other powers. And they forgot Yahweh. Why did they forget Yahweh? Because they were committing idolatry. That's why we forgot Yahweh, who had created them in the earth, and the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his power, powers of wood and stone, which could neither speak nor hear nor deliver, and the sons of men served them, and they became their powers. That's still happening today. We have many religions where they worship powers of wood and stone and idols. So I put this to you, that because they left off worshiping Yah, we know in Genesis 11, they were scattered across the earth. Men were scattered according to their tribes and according to their peoples. They were scattered. But because they went on to worship wood and stone, and their languages were scattered as well, only one line maintained that language of the Shamayim, and that is the lineage of Adam, Noah, Shem, Abraham, down through Jacob to the tribe or children of Israel. Jubilees 12, verse 25 to 26. See, some of you don't believe that Abraham spoke in that language. So here we go. And Yahweh Almighty said, open his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak with his mouth with the language which has been revealed. For it has ceased from the mouths of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow of Babel. So in other words, when Babel was overthrown, the language of the Shamayim ceased to be amongst men. But then there came a time after the overthrow of Babel that Yahweh revealed that language back to Abraham, and he spoke it again. He could speak it. Maybe his great-grandfather Noah and Father Shem spoke it between themselves, but they all didn't understand. But now Abraham was initiated into that language, and he himself would speak that language. That is what is happening. And I opened his mouth and his ears, and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation. So what is the tongue or language of the creation? Hebrew. Ibare. Not Israeli, not French, not English, as they've tried to make it the language of the universal. No, it was Ibare, the language of the Shamayim. Verse 27. And he took the books of his fathers, and these were written in Ibare, and he transcribed them. Hey, hey, hey. So he could read Ibare, and he could transcribe Ibare so that others could understand it. And he began from henceforth to study them. And I made known to him that which he could not understand, and he studied them during the 6 rainy months of the year. So during the dry season, he did the work, and when the rains were coming down for 6 months, he studied at home and ate what had been stored up. Joshua chapter 26, verse 16 to 17 and 27 to 28. 16 to 17. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, was 60 years old when he begat them. And the boys grew up to their 15th year. That's the twins, Esau and Jacob. And they came among the society of men. He introduced them to the world. Esau was a designing or scheming and deceitful man, and an expert hunter in the field. And Jacob was a man perfect or mature and wise, dwelling in tents, feeding flocks, and learning the instructions of Yahweh. Now you tell me, how can he learn the instructions of Yahweh if he cannot read and write? You're going to find out who taught him. But the point is, Esau, who is the European, did not want to learn to read and write. But Yahweh, through Abraham, taught Jacob. And of course, he would have taught Isaac. And the commands of his father and mothers. Verse 27. And teach you your children and your seed the instruction of Yahweh. Who were they to teach? Ibare. They were supposed to teach it to their children and to their seed. The instructions of Yahweh and his commandments. That means they had to learn to read and write, and teach them the upright way in which they should go, in order that it may be well with them. For how long? Forever. But we know we didn't do that one, but we can get back there. And Isaac answered his father and said unto him, this is Isaac answering Abraham, that which my Adonai, master, that is, Lord, has commanded, that will I do. And I will not depart from the commands of Yahweh, my Allah. I will keep all that he commanded me. And Abraham blessed his son Isaac, and also his children. And Abraham taught Jacob the instructions of Yahweh and all his ways. Abraham taught Jacob the language of the Shamayim, so that he would be able to read and write in that language. Jubilees 39, verse 6. But he did not surrender his soul, and he remembered Yahweh and the words which Jacob his father, so we're talking about Joseph, used to read from amongst the words of Abraham. Where were they? Written in a book, that no man should commit fornication with a woman who has a husband, that for him the punishment of death has been ordained in the heavens. Where was it ordained? On the heavenly tablets, before the Most High Yahweh, and the sin will be recorded against him in the eternal books continually before Yahweh. We don't want that. We do not want that. Joshua 49, verse 9 to 10. Oh, let's just go back a bit. So Joseph knew that fornication, or adultery in this case, was wrong because he had read it for himself in the language of the Shamayim, the language of his people, Ibaré. He had learned it from Abraham's books that he kept, that his father had, and he read it and therefore knew and said, nope, I ain't doing it, because this sin is recorded in heaven if I do it. There's certain things you just know ain't worth your soul. Joshua 49, verse 9 to 10. And all the officers answered the king and said, and this is concerning Joseph being in Egypt now, but surely it is written in the laws of Egypt. So the Egyptians had written laws, and it should not be violated, that no man shall reign over Egypt, nor be the second to the king, but one who has knowledge in all the languages of the sons of men. Now, therefore, now there's somebody who can speak all the languages of all the kingdom. We find out later on that Joseph learns to speak it all in one night. Now, therefore, our Lord and King, behold, this Hebrew. Well, how did they know he's a Hebrew? He's going to tell you he could only speak the Hebrew language. This Hebrew man can only speak the Hebrew language, which is a lie, because by that time he had been in Egypt for quite some time. Therefore, he would have been able to speak Egyptian. Not only that do we know, but he was brought up in the house of Potiphar for some time, where he was the master of the house, which meant he had lots of different slaves that were under him, and either all of them had to speak, guess what, Egyptian, or else he would have to learn to speak their language so that he can communicate with each of them. So he probably had a few languages under his belt by the time he's standing before Pharaoh. And how then can he be over us, the second under government, a man who not even knows our language? Lie. Okay, Joshua 53:8. And Yasap read the letter from his father and knew his father's writing. So his father could write and he could read, and he could even recognize his father's handwriting. And he wished to weep, and he went into an inner room, and he wept a great weeping, and he went out. So afterwards he came out. Joshua 54:34. And Yasap heard all these words that his brethren spoke before him. And they did not know that Yasap understood them, for they imagined that he knew not to speak Hebrew. All right. So in other words, this is a clan language. Only the Hebrews speak Hebrew. Only the Israelites spoke that language. And therefore, Israel, the descendants of Israel, spoke Hebrew and did not expect anyone else to understand them. But Joseph, Yasap, understood them and was able to hear, understand, and act accordingly. Jubilees 43:15. And he, that's Yasap, conversed with them, his brethren, in the Hebrew tongue, and fell on their neck and wept. Now, I want you to remember that he had a translator, so it wasn't that no one understood. He had a translator who probably came from the land of Canaan and was familiar with the local languages and therefore understood the Hebrew tongue. But he was not, according to the Bible, one of them. The translator, he who understood Hebrew, that translated for Yasap, did not come from amongst our people. He may have been a slave amongst our people who later on went to Egypt, but he was not one of us. Okay. Jubilees 45 verse 16. And he, this is Israel, gave all his books and the books of his fathers to Levi his son, that he might preserve them. So the Levitical priesthood was supposed to read Ibaré, sometimes called biblical Hebrew, and preserve all the books that were given by Jacob and the forefathers. Now let me just make this clear. Somewhere, someone has all of our books. Somewhere under wraps, they have our language and they know the language of the Shamayim, but they may not properly understand them. However, because of the interrelationship, the interlocking relationship of the languages and the keys that have been given to us, they can probably, through software or otherwise, decode them. But the fact is that they're our books and they were given to the Levites to preserve them. The knowledge and the means and the ways of interpretation are given to the Levitical priesthood or the descendants of the Levites. They were given those books to preserve. So are there books written in Ibaré? The answer is yes. And renew them, that is, when they wore out, they were supposed to rewrite them again for the children until this day. Keep them legible, keep them fresh, write out fresh copies so that it would not be lost. See, all of these papyruses and this, that, the other you hear about, that the book was translated from the Septicus, the Recepticus, and so on. Let me explain to you. Those were copies of our books. The Recepticus, or the, I'm trying to think of the name now, the Vaticanus, and I cannot think of it right now, but that's not important. The point is that they translated it out of our scripts. This is not a white man's book. This is not a Chinese man's book. It's not a Asian man's book. This book, called the Bible, is our book. And they took out books. It's not even an Ethiopian book. It's our book. Our book, the book that belonged to the children of Israel. Jubilees 47 verse 9. And afterward, when you were grown up, they brought you unto the daughter of Pharaoh, speaking of Moses, and you didst become her son. And Amram, your father, taught you writing. What writing do you think Amram, the Levite, would have taught his son Moses? You're right. He would have taught him Ibaré. After you had completed 3 weeks, they brought you into the royal court. 3 7s, 21. Jasher 82 verse 10 to 11 and verse 24 to 25. And Yahweh wrote the 10 commandments which he had commanded the children of Yasharal upon 2 tables or tablets of stone, which he gave to Moshe to command the children of Israel. Now, what language does Yahweh know that Moses and the children of Israel know that the 10 commandments would have been written in? Absolutely correct. It would be Ibaré. And at the end of 40 days and 40 nights, when Yahweh had finished speaking to Moshe on Mount Sinai, then Yahweh gave to Moshe the tablets of stone written with the finger or power of Yahweh. Verse 24. Then spake Yahweh to Moshe to hew, cut out 2 stone tablets, and to bring them up to Yahweh, who would write upon them the 10 commandments. So the second time round, Yahweh didn't provide the tablets of stone. He said, you go do the work. You go dig it out and bring it up. Now Masha did so, and he came down and hewed the 2 tablets and went up to Mount Sinai to Yahweh. And Yahweh wrote the 10 commandments upon the tablets. Right. So part 2 of tonight now. By the way, before we continue, like, subscribe, share, click the bell, and let everybody know that this language is the true language. Especially, I ask you to give us the thumbs up, because the thumbs up is important for us spreading our message. So give it the thumbs up. Thank you very much for doing so. Joshua chapter 9, verse 30 to 33, and then verse 37. And Yahweh said to the 70 heavenly messengers who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man may not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them. So we're talking about the destruction. How did the languages get destroyed? We've seen that our forefathers spoke it, but not until the days of Abraham and Shem and Noah. Shem, Noah passed it to Abraham, and then around about that time, all of them lost language, and only Abraham could speak the language of the Shamayim. Verse 33, and from that day following, they forgot each man his neighbor's tongue or language, and they could not understand to speak in one tongue or language. And when the builder took from the hands of his neighbor lime or stone, which he did not order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbor, that he would die. So they frustrated one another because they weren't supplying what they asked for. And they ceased building the city and the tower. Therefore he called that place Babel, for there Yahweh confounded the language of the whole earth. Confused the language of the whole earth. Behold, it was at the east of the land of Shinar. So Babel is another reference point to let you know where the promised land is. Did they find Babel? The answer is yes, in Iraq. Jubilees 10, verse 24 to 25. And he confounded their language, and they no longer understood one another's speech. And they ceased then to build the city and the tower. For this reason, the whole land of Shinar is called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound all the language of the children of men. And from thence they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. Joshua 10, verse 3 and verse 37. And all the families became according to its language. Every family, Hamites, Shemites, Japhetites, became according to their language branch. And then after that, they're going to branch out even further and become more confused. As time has gone on, the languages have become more diverse as people have spread out. Now, man is trying to bring the languages back together, but Yahweh said that it won't happen until he says so. All right. Each according to its language, its land, or its city. Verse 37. And these are the families of the children of Shem, according to their language. So the children of Shem, the Shemites, have a specific language that is relative to each other. And cities, after they were scattered upon the earth, after the tower, So Shemitic languages bear similarities to Hebrew, Ibarre. But Jeremiah 17, verse 4, made us to know that the children of Israel themselves would lose their language, which is why we're in this predicament today of having to rediscover our language, by going to the Bible to read our texts and understand. Jeremiah 17:4. And thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage. What's that? You're going to discontinue your language. You're going to discontinue your history. You're going to forget your culture. You're going to forget the ways of Yahweh that you were taught. You're going to start eating pork. You're going to start worshiping on a Sunday. You're going to forget the feast of Yahweh. You're going to forget how to work them out. You're going to forget everything to do with Yahweh that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. Isn't that what's happening today? For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. But there is coming a time when it's going to be restored. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 1. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 1 verse 1. Wherefore, let me entreat you to read it with favor. That's the word. And attention, and to pardon us, wherein we may seem to come short of some words which we have labored to interpret. So by his time, they were working hard to interpret our language, but he was trying to stick to reading our language for a reason. Goes on to say, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. In other words, reading the Bible in English is not the same as when we learn to read it in Hebrew. It doesn't have the same force. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. They are more forceful when they are spoken in our language. So we got to recover our language, brethren. We've got to recover our language. Ecclesiasticus 39 verse 31 to 32. They shall rejoice in his commandment, and they shall be ready upon earth when need is, or when needs arises. And when their time is come, they shall not transgress his word. Speaking of us, when the days of Esau is over, we will no longer transgress the word of Yah. Therefore, from the beginning, I was resolved and thought upon these things, and have left them in writing. So Ecclesiasticus was more than likely also written in the Hebrew tongue, because the guy who wrote it was averted. He had an aversion to reading in another language what he should be read in the language of the Shamayim. But Zephaniah 3 and verse 9 tells us that our pure language will be restored. We are part of that movement, my brethren, right now. Zephaniah 3:9. For then will I turn or return to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one consent. Yahweh has promised to restore our language so that we, the Hebrew people, can call upon Yahweh in the Hebrew tongue or language. Acts 2 verse 4, 1 to 4. And when the days of Pentecost were fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house, Bayath, where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues, like as of fire, or flickering flames, and it came upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Rawak HaKodash, and began to speak with other tongues as the Rawak gave them utterance. This was the beginning of the restoration of our language, that Yah was restoring to us a pure language. You see, having the rawak enables us to activate what is in our DNA so that we can once again learn our language more easily than anyone else. Speaking in Israeli doesn't mean that they understand our language. All it means is they speak Israeli. Jeremiah 31, verse 31 to 34. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, or Yasharal, and with the house of Yahweh, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, which my covenant they break, although I was an husbandman unto them, says Yahweh. He was faithfully married. Verse 33. But this shall be the covenant which I make with the house of Yasharal after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their Alawah, and they shall be my people. This is receiving the Rawak HaKodash that puts the laws on the inside of us, and the ability to walk with them, speak them, read them, etc., is put on the inside of us. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith Yahweh. For I will forgive their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. Now, if this is your first time with us on this channel, remember to like, subscribe, share, and click the bell. Especially give us the thumbs up, the likes, because this is important for spreading the message. Why don't you take a moment and do that now? For those of you who like to support us financially, we want to thank you for supporting us financially and supporting us in prayers also. Do keep us in your prayers, and do give something if you appreciate the work that we are doing. Thank you so much. Hebrews 8, verse 10. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Yasharal after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my laws in their mind. So where is your heart? In your mind. And write them in their hearts, or even write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a power supreme, or Alawah, and they shall be to me a people, my people. Hebrews 10:16. This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days of old, saith Yahweh. I will put my laws into their hearts, even in their minds will I write them. If you have the Rawak, you have the ability to learn to speak and read Ibaré, because it is Yahweh's decision that we should recover everything that we have lost. 1 Samuel 30, verse 8. And David inquired at or of Yahweh, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail or fault or failure, recover all. Without fail, we will recover all. Now let me summarize. If you happen to have any questions, write to me, HebrewApostolic@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. As you write those things down to me, I say thank you very much, and I will reply. So our language, in summary, is the language of the heavens, the one that Yahweh speaks to his angels, or Malachim, the ones that the Malachim first spoke to Enoch, our forefather, the one that Enoch passed down to Noah, passed down to Shem, passed down to Abraham, passed down to Isaac, passed down to Jacob, passed down to Yasap, and to Levi, who passed it on to the children of Israel. It was decimated in the destruction of 70 AD, because up until then, all the books had been written specifically to the Israelite, by Israelites, and in Iberei. Yes, later on, they transcribed them into Babylonian Hebrew, which is because the same letter system applies, but the same sounds were used by Israelites. We, therefore, have the ability to reconstruct our language because it is already in our DNA. So our language is in our DNA, and we are able to learn it, able to then transcribe it, able to correct the grammar once we put in the time. So learning Iberei is not hard, it's time. And it is activated by the Most High inside of us, by the Rawak that he has given to us. If you get this, then you got a lot, and you will find yourself moving on and growing. Do not accept that those languages out there are Iberei. Iberei was written down for our benefit, and remember, we have a specific Alap-bat, and that Alap-bat is phonetic. And because it is phonetic, when you see those sounds, you make the sound that you see, and those sounds make up words. Those words make up phrases. Those phrases make sentences. Sentences build paragraphs. Paragraphs build chapters. Chapters build books. Here is the sound of Iberei for those of you who might be dropping in at this time.
Ancient Hebrew alphabet song sing-along for your Howard children in the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Remember, kids, we read from right to left, starting with the first row. Abagadaha was a kataya, Kalamanasa ipatazakwarashatha. Let's try it again. Abagadaha was a kataya, Kalamanasa ipatazakwarashatha. One more time. Abagadaha was a kataya, Kalamanasa ipatazakwarashatha.
This is our language. Don't let anyone take it away from you. Don't let anyone minimize it. Don't let anyone sidetrack it or put it in the slow lane and deface it or defame it. It is our language. It has been given to us, and it is being restored even as we speak. So all you need to do is give it your best, and give it your best regularly. So homework, get out your Zadok apps and work on the Zadok information. Give that Zadok a thumbs up and keep practicing what it says. Also, remember, if you can, get yourself one of these books, which I've spoken of to you about before. Let me just find it. 1 second. Or one of these, the Torah, Interlinear Scriptures by William H. Sanford. Get the Torah and make sure that you read it regularly. I will also be providing a website that will allow you to practice your Hebrew reading and writing, because I know that some of you may not be able to afford this book. And so we don't want you to have a hardship, but we will give it to you. The website. Now, on top of that, what else do I want to share with you? I want to share that you need to practice regularly. Just 10 minutes a day is all it takes for you to keep moving ahead. And if you will do that, you will grow. If you put in more time, you will grow faster. And also, we recommend that you give whatever it is you can on a regular basis. Look down there, you'll see Israelite language. So it's it's on hashtag, and it's the pound sign, that is the British sterling pound sign, followed by UDRUDENN. DRUDENN. Give what it is you can, and we appreciate you because you make our encouragement. You encourage us to continue to teach and continue to share with you. Now, for those of you who can't, it's okay. But those of you who can, do the right thing. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. You could be otherwise engaged, and for committing yourself to learning about Iba. This has been the lesson on Iba, lesson 10, and we thank you for being with us. May Yahweh barak you in the truth. Open your eyes to the influence of our language, how other nations have taken it up. So we have influenced a number of major groups through our language. We know we've influenced the Greeks. We know we've influenced the Israelis, and we know we've influenced English, because those three languages and everything that comes off of them is influenced by Iba. They didn't know about the astronomy and mathematics and all the things. Who built the pyramids? We did. Yeah. And to this day, they can't work out how we did it. Why? Because that is the brilliance that Yahweh has put inside of his people. You know that no pink skin could take that sun. So don't try and tell me it was an Israeli. It was one of us. And we are not Hamites. We are not from Egypt. May Yahweh barak you in the truth and keep you as you grow and flow. Bye for now.